Dreamweavers welcomes you to another in its series of videos about relating to your dreams. In this two-part presentation, we will explore symbols of particular importance to women. In part one, female adornment, clothes, jewelry, hair. And in part two, the rituals that mark the stages of a woman's life, pregnancy and birth and menstruation. With us is Virginia Bean Rudder, who is a Jungian analyst practicing in Mill Valley, California. Virginia has just written a book, Woman Changing Woman, published by Harper, San Francisco. Welcome, Virginia. Clothes are extremely important to women. I don't know of anybody who doesn't consider what shall I wear one of the ultimate questions in approaching any special occasion, and also our interest in clothes is attested to by the number of shopping centers filled with women's clothes, don't you think? What do you think clothes are about? What is this interest in clothes?
Well, I think certainly from a therapeutic standpoint and also a developmental standpoint for girls, I think clothes express oneself. And I think that each change in one's self-perception then calls for a new expression in the form of clothes.
That clothes would express one's self-image, how one sees oneself at any particular time. And as that shifts, either the new dress we want reflects that shift, or sometimes, I know for myself, it's important to kind of get ahead of the game by buying something to wear that might sort of pull me over the edge, right? that like the dressing up for the Navajo ritual, sometimes we dress up in order to move to the next stage
yes,
too. So one of the meanings of clothes for women is a real personal expression of self, and certainly in this period of time there are so many ways of dressing. I mean, one can have quite an individual expression of dress, right? The other way I think we use clothes is for dressing as costume. Particular role we're going to play in life's drama at any particular time, right? And in Jungian psychology, there's the concept of the persona, which would be how we want the world to see us, right? Or what role we're playing at a particular time. So if a woman is about to go into a position where she needs all the power she can gather, she might pull out her power suit, right? Or if there's a want to be sexually attractive, one pulls out the shiny black and red thing, or whatever feels sexual to her. So persona is another way. Often dreams either show a need for changing one's individual expression, right? I mean, I think of dreams in which a woman might see herself dressed in something that she ordinarily does not wear, or in a particular kind of ritual dress, right? Like a color or a new kind of style. And those dreams would indicate some attention to the dress as an expression of oneself, or if one is too identified with the persona, clothes as persona, one's dreams might often correct for that by showing that particular way of dressing as out of date, out of style, tattered, torn up, right? Or even missing, right? And then the other kind of dress is ritual dress. That's the particular kind of dress Virginia talked about in the Navajo ritual. What are ritual dresses you think of? I think of christening, right?
Well, there's the Latin American quinceañera, which is done when a girl is 15, and it's sort of like a coming out party, but with a very, very elaborate dress, like ballroom dress.
Yeah, or wedding dress. It seems like it's a religious ritual. And the bat mitzvah, girls pick a particular dress, right? The next dress that seems of particular importance is the prom dress. Right? That's another coming out dress. And then there is the wedding dress, right? The really wonderful presenting oneself as the bride. So much energy and time is spent selecting a wedding dress sometimes. Let's talk about some dreams that include images of dresses. There are several in your book. One is about a woman patient who was in therapy with Virginia, and I'll read the dream. I come into a courtyard and find Juliet's balcony in Verona. It's cool and wet. I see a doorway and look up. You are standing in the doorway, and I realize it's your house, you, the therapist, Virginia. You have a 10 or 11-year-old girl with you, your daughter. But I think, I know she doesn't have a daughter. I feel a series of very powerful emotions, pain, envy, wanting to be close to you. I feel lonely, shut out, not there. I'm wearing a long refugee-like dress, menstruating copiously. I turn and start to walk away. What did you do with that dream? How did you relate to the woman with the dream?
Well, the first thing I did was to ask her what her associations to all the elements in the dream were. And the important factor for her about the dream was that this dream prompted her to come back to therapy after she had been gone for several years. And she felt that in essence her blood had brought her back, that the menstruating, it would just seem so quintessentially important that she had to touch back into a place that she felt really supported her femininity. And the girl who's my daughter, I did not have a daughter at that time, is clearly an internal, a younger aspect of this young woman who was probably in her late 20s when she came. And it brings her back to that initiatory stage that we were just talking about, the stage of first menstruation, as does the image of Juliet, who was
Juliet
very,
on the balcony. Yeah.
yes, very, very young. So,
And the dress?
and the dress, I think, the refugee-like dress, spoke to her sense of feeling a bit alienated and out of touch with herself, out of touch with her inner home, being
Like a refugee.
away, like a refugee. Yes.
So you will notice that in working with the dream, Virginia as therapist helps the other person come to finding her own personal associations with each of the elements, and then Virginia might add her own associations, as for example, she doesn't have a daughter, so she might remind the woman that this daughter figure in the dream might actually be a younger part of herself. And in that weaving together, they also weave in the context of the dreamer. The dreamer says what's going on in her life at that particular time that the dream might be speaking to. And this refugee-like dress then would symbolize her feeling of lostness and needing to find a home for herself, someplace that she belonged. Another dream. I am in a chapel, dressed almost like a nun. The principal says I can't come into the chapel because I don't have one piece. What about dressed like a nun? What about this woman?
Well, this particular woman did have a Catholic background, and nuns had been her ideal, her sort of ideal women when she was young. But what had happened was she had over-identified with being the good girl, the pious one, and kind of shut away her shadow. So I think this shut away all the dark side, anything to do with, of course, in Catholicism, sexuality and spontaneity. She was very good at tending the altars, but she couldn't quite acknowledge that dark, fertile side of herself. And so I think in this dream, the being dressed as a nun but not being allowed to come in because she's missing a piece means that she's moving in her life and in her therapy away from that image. She can't quite completely identify with it anymore. She's moving toward a greater wholeness.
And the way she's dressed like a nun, helps the woman really understand that this is the image she's caught in.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Another dream. I see you outside the therapy context, wearing an old-fashioned tight skirt. You are flamboyantly, provocatively dressed, projecting a very sexual image. Then I am in a fashion show, modeling a gown. I don't feel part of this elegant affair. There are spiral staircases and velvet drapes. I'm wearing an elegant formal. Some friends see me and ask me about it. I tell them the show must be over because I am the last one to walk downstairs. I dismiss their questions because I am embarrassed. What would you say about such a dream?
Well, this dream is also, it really follows nicely on the previous dream you read. It is the same person, and this shows what she's moving toward, out of her nun-like identification and being the good girl, and then struggling with what kind of identity do I have? How do I integrate the sexuality, which she has projected onto me in the dream? And how do I integrate who I once was when I was wearing that formal as an adolescent? And she was very uncomfortable. She said about this dream that she was uncomfortable even dressing this way with her husband because she was embarrassed. I mean, she was afraid, she'd be laughed at or something. So here she's moving toward that new identity.
What about the image of it's you who's dressed in the sexy dress? It's the other woman, you who's dressed in the sexy dress. What would that say about this period?
Well, I think that this is a really important issue for women in or out of therapy, which is that often the things that we haven't realized in ourselves or gotten in touch with in a vital way get projected onto another woman. And there's a lot of envy, oh, well, she has the perfect dress, or she has the perfect hairstyle, and I'm uncomfortable or awkward. And in this particular case, though, since it was in the context of therapy, she was able to project it on me and then take it back in the work because it's really about her.
So that another woman wearing a particular kind of dress or costume would actually give us an image of what we might be moving into but are not able to claim yet, right?
Yes.
And I think particularly that she's working with you, so she would obviously value you as a woman that she could relate to and have some sense of value for you, and that you can wear the sexual dress. Was a real emphasis for her that she could begin to approach wearing her sexuality too.
Yes. So it's permission giving. Yes.
There's another dream in which Virginia as the therapist appears that's very interesting, a little different shift. I come to see you for a regular session. You are wearing a creamy beige silk man's tie with a small reddish burgundy design on it. I like the design, I say, but I'm not used to you in a man's tie. Then I ask if I can try it on. I have to ask how to tie it because I've never worn one. We continue our walk and meet my father's partner. He says, "You will never make it on that road because you have sandals on and it's cold."
Well, this is the third in the series. I mean, this is the woman who negotiating her sexuality and her more formal upbringing and her relationship to Catholicism. But in this dream, her association to the tie were the kind of scarves that I wore in the therapy. And they were scarves that she associated with the priest, the priest's vestments when he was saying Mass. And she was experiencing at that time a shift in her sort of more masculine identified spirituality, more to a body-based feminine spirituality. And she also had a lot of trouble with the shift from her work to home. And so she saw the tie as my ability to sort of negotiate both of those dimensions.
That you could wear a man's tie without becoming a man.
Right, and we're wearing sandals, which is the more feminine thing,
Yeah.
and it's the father world that says those don't work.
Right.
So she's still got the resistance to
Right.
going the feminine way, but But she's there, she's wearing the sandals.
I think it's very interesting that Virginia pointed out that the scarves, like vestments, which that reversal has been going on throughout our culture, hasn't it? That
Yes.
men's ties are like women's scarves, and women's scarves are like priest vestments, right? But the scarf or the tie as another image of adornment that's very important to us to signify somehow a feeling of spirit.
Yes.
In a way, right? You know, when a man wears his tie, he's in the spirit of being powerful and all buckled up, and when a woman wears a scarf, it adds a certain spirit to her costume.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw a woman's dream. I'm enthusiastically participating in the class discussion about the early history of religion when the professor points out that I have on no clothes. I am bare to the waist. I'm so embarrassed. What about being bare in a dream? Bare to the waist, particularly, is a fascinating image, isn't it?
Yes. Well, of course, on the archetypal level, I think of Minoan Crete and the way women wore dresses that bared their breasts. So I certainly think of it as an affirmation of the life-giving dimension of women's bodies.
There's the Cretan image of Isis where she has this big skirt out of petals, right?
Right.
But bare-breasted and holding a snake in each hand, right? Which is something about this woman power. But not having on clothes in a dream often occurs. A woman sees herself either bare to the waist or completely naked. And one needs to look at that. First of all, I think that sometimes can be an image of being completely natural, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and getting back to some essential quality in oneself and back again to that body-based sense of a woman's life, and whether it's bearing children or creative life, having fertility for the tribe, for the community, for the world that the Navajo have. That the woman's body is identified with the earth and its fertility. And metaphorically for us, that means that we have so much to contribute coming out of this 2,000 years of patriarchy.
Might emphasize the particular power of woman,
Yes.
or of the feminine in the culture. On the other hand, sometimes images of being stripped happen, I think particularly for postmenopausal women. There often are images in which she's suffered a great deal of loss or is stripped of clothes and of jewelry at various stages. And that feeling of being stripped of an old identity is often portrayed in dreams. And that is archetypally based in the, archetypally told in the Sumerian lore about the goddess Inanna being stripped at seven different stages. And one of the lines is she's then stripped bare and hung on a peg to rot like a piece of rotting flesh, right? On the other hand, being naked might mean, on one hand, that the dreamer, might not have an adequate persona, that the woman is too bare and
Too
needs
vulnerable.
too vulnerable. Or it also might be compensating for being too identified with persona, that one needs to take off so many clothes.
But it certainly works in terms of as a beautiful image of the transitional stage in an initiation to the other stage. Because you always, and in many puberty ceremonies, the old clothes are taken off and the woman the girl is bathed, and then new clothes are provided. So
That transitional...
the nudity is
is a
transition.
transitional
Yes.
stage, yeah. Let's talk about some dreams about special dresses, wedding dresses in particular, huh? I saw a dream of a woman about 60 years old about a wedding dress that I want to tell you. I am trying to get to my wedding, but here I am again without the right dress. As in earlier dreams, I am completely inappropriately dressed. I have on a short red cocktail dress and I cannot find my wedding dress or even anything that will do. The woman's associations to this dream were that she had dreamed many dreams in which she was trying to get to her wedding but could not find the right dress. So there was something about wedding that meant to her a joining with the masculine part of herself. She had worked with her dreams for a long time. And also about a kind of right relationship to the archetype of marriage, to getting married itself. And it's interesting that she saw the red cocktail dress as her being kind of caught in an extroverted sexual image of herself that she couldn't quite get rid of, that here she is still dressed like a sexually attractive person and she can't quite get into that white wedding dress that she dreams of getting into. Do you think of anything more with the dream about?
Well, I often think that a woman really needs to bring something of herself to the union with the masculine, either internal or the external marriage, and that having the right dress in this symbolic context means that she feels that she's arrived and that she's full of something that she has to offer. So I would think that there's an element of that she hasn't yet gotten into that other aspect of herself that would maybe include the sexual, but also move on to a more mature femininity that wasn't limited to that.
To an image of herself as sexual object.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the color red? It shows up so often in women's dreams.
Well, the historical thing is the red light district.
Yeah.
For sure, but I think of it as the color of passion and feeling.
I do too. Yeah, and which particularly belongs to the feminine. It also is the red of blood. However, in many dreams about menstruation that look like they're about menstruation particularly, they're more like images of brown, right? Like mud or earth.
Right.
But red is life's blood, and red is a very important color. Some women feel very uncomfortable wearing red at all, right?
Yes.
Some women are too much in the red, huh? Yeah. I want to tell another dream about a wedding dress. I like this dream particularly. This is a young woman who's about 35 who really is considering getting married. I am happily running toward my wedding, dressed in the prettiest old-fashioned pot-de-soie white dress. As I climb into the car, my mother is horrified to see that I have on hiking boots and red wool socks under the dress. Isn't that a wonderful dream? I think that somehow that dream touched me, and as the woman and I talked about it, there was such a feeling of her being able to keep her own identity, that she puts on the collective dress of the wedding and a very old-fashioned dress of pot-de-soie, the finest material, to get married in, but underneath she still has on her hiking boots, right?
Yes.
And her red socks. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Yes.
What about this business of running that comes up in a dream in your book, too?
Well, in the Navajo ceremony, the girl is adorned, and those are receptive things that happen to her, where she's cared for in a hands-on way, including a very special massage and a molding ceremony. But there are also active motifs. She has to take up her life energy at that point in a different way. And one of the things that she has to do is that she runs a race each day at dawn and at dusk toward the east. And she gets to go as far as she wants, but each race she has to go a little farther. So she's challenging herself, and other people can run with her, but they can't pass her, and under pain of early death and your teeth falling out, etc. You are not allowed to compete with the girl in honor. But this strengthens her and teaches her endurance. So it's a very important image in the Navajo ceremony of coming alive and taking your energy into your own hands.
So often moving towards one's wedding feels like a kind of so receptive, as if one is kind of carried in this slow march down the aisle, right? And there's Something about this woman's dream about running toward her wedding, which seemed to her to really express her joy and her energy for moving toward that transition in her life. I want to read a dream out of Virginia's book. I have a dress, Italian, old, antique, feminine, cotton with white lace. It's a shirt dress for summer. I bought it at a flea market. My paternal grandfather scrunches it up and says he has the right to take it because it was his mother's, so rightfully now it's his. I say, no, I bought it, but I get confused. Maybe it is his? What did you do with work on that dream?
Well, this young woman had a very, very difficult relationship with her father, and it's her paternal grandfather in the dream who is challenging her right to the dress. And we really saw that as her inability at times to stay grounded in her own feminine nature and not let some authoritative man tell her that it didn't really belong to her, that she ought to be some other way, that she ought to, be rational and reasonable and those sorts of things. So the dress to her, and she was very hard on herself. She had a very strong superego and criticized herself a lot. So the dress, the summery, flowing white dress, really felt to her like being able to just relax and be herself.
And not have to let herself be dressed by the old patriarchy anymore, huh?
Right.
Yeah. And in the second half of the dream, it goes, I see a group of women runners, Amazons. They have a red piece of cloth held as a banner in front of them. A coach, a man arrives. My group is still sitting on the ground, collapse. He says, we need another group of women to run like them. I am the first one to volunteer, and I think I can't do it, but I do it. So there's that running again, huh?
Yes, and I think that makes a perfect parallel to the Navajo ceremony in which the girl is first receptive and being adorned, as this woman is with negotiating her white summery dress and then moving into the running motif where she really does come alive. And this dream happened at a time in this young woman's life where she was taking her life in her own hands and getting into graduate school in art and taking up something that her father actually had not had any respect for. And so that running motif that she doesn't think she can do it, but she does do it.
She does it.
So wonderful.
And she recalls in the dream the Amazons, who were the women who cut off their right breast to fight, right?
Right.
They sacrificed some of the nurturance capability in a woman for the ability to fight for life, to defend themselves and to protect themselves. Amazons have gotten a bad name as feminism has come into the fore, but there also is the very important role that the image of the Amazon plays in giving us women a background of the ability to be strong, to be courageous, to do what we need to do for ourselves, and in a feminine way. It's also interesting in this dream, I like that she has the red in just a piece.
Yes.
A little piece, right? A little piece of the red. The passion is there. Huh?
Right,
Yeah.
yes. And I think, it's interesting apropos of the shoes in the previous dream and the way that Nike ads have developed in recent times,
It isn't it?
The Nike has really brilliantly, I think, taken up this whole theme of women can run.
Yeah.
And I just find their ads very, very provocative.
Marvelous for women. What about shoes? What about shoes and dreams? We spoke of a dream about sandals earlier.
Oh, yes, right.
And we often see dreams in which the woman, the dreamer herself, is not wearing shoes, not wearing any shoes, or another woman figure in the dream is not wearing shoes. What do you make of shoes? How do you approach it?
I see that a lot, as I'm sure you do, without shoes, either in dreams, or I also have people who come in and take off their shoes first thing
right.
in my office. And Because I'm connected to this initiatory tradition, I think of the initiates in all the Greek ceremonies, the Eleusinian mysteries, for example. The initiate has to take off their shoes. It's a way of preparing them. They have to leave an old standpoint, an old place where they were grounded in order to move into this renewal, into this new identity.
And there's the biblical reference, I don't know just where it is, but take off your shoes, you're on holy ground.
Oh, yes.
Which would be another image of shoes as being somehow one needs to get basically in touch with the earth. And my goodness, one can see in the department stores these days a new kind of shoes, can't we? That very old-fashioned shoes. Here we are in the age when some of us are getting as comfortable as possible, and there are these new shoes of 3-inch heels in which women are again putting on these teetering shoes, right? Of being barely in touch with the ground. And there are shoes that are barefoot sandals, right, that show more of the foot, and then old lady shoes that are all buckled up. So to pay attention to shoes, perhaps as one would question oneself about the particular relationship to the earth that the shoe might represent, and a particular standpoint or identity that one might have at the time, or a new standpoint suggested. Jewelry is so feminine and so ancient. Some of the earliest art objects are actually pieces of jewelry, like beads and hairpins and bracelets. Women all over the world have always made jewels for themselves out of whatever material was at hand, sometimes out of clay, sometimes out of dirt, stone, semi-precious stones when they could find them. In some African tribes, women have even created jewelry on their bodies by cutting or burning themselves to create scars that look like jewels. These are particular scarification rites. And this body marking is quite prevalent in our culture today with the renewed interest in tattoos and piercing that the young people are doing. Jewelry is also a symbol of feminine value, particularly about how one sees one value. Sometimes it's the value of a status symbol. Many people are interested in how clear, how big their diamond is, right? Other people find themselves particularly interested in very meaningful jewelry, something that expresses meaning in their lives, like meaning because somebody special has given to them, or a particular symbol, like I have on my snake pin today, right? We used to laugh that you could tell it was a Jungian group because of all the interesting symbols people wore as jewelry. Jewelry shows value for oneself. Women love to have men give them jewelry, expressing their love and value of the woman. Jewelry often is bought by a woman for herself at a particular stage of transition.
Yes.
I have a woman friend who says that jewelry comforts her. She buys jewelry for comfort. In fact, she says, jewelry is my mother, which I think is a wonderful image. And these warm attachments to these objects that carry a sense of value and a sense of meaning for us is very important to women, and often shows up in women's dreams. Let's talk about some dreams that are reported in your book about women and jewelry. We go to your house, a different one from my previous dreams. As we approach, I say, I've been here before. We go upstairs to your bedroom. You're showing me jewels. It seems you have access to a special source. We're looking at a pair of earrings, square, gold and silver. You give them to me to wear. You push them into my hands, and then you kiss my hand. I panic. I say, they are too heavy. I don't want this to happen. I remember the first dream I had about you running your hands down my back, the sexual danger. Here, too, it is dangerous. What did you do with this woman in her dream?
Well, the wonderful thing about this dream is that the woman had done a lot of it with it for herself, because she remembered an earlier dream that had very much bothered her, you know, about the potential for intimacy in our psychotherapeutic relationship. And at that point, she had been very afraid of it. But here, she felt honored to be given the earrings, even though they were heavy. It was really the responsibility for her own development, for her own life, and she was taking it on, and she was accepting it, and she felt both the resistance and the fear that perhaps it was too close, and intimacy always had a feeling of fraught with danger for her. And I thought it was so interesting that they were both gold and silver.
Yes.
Because gold usually refers to the sun and to the masculine side of things, and silver to the moon and the feminine side of things. So it seemed to me that it spoke both to her internal coming together of masculine and feminine, as well as her ability to perhaps bridge those opposites in the world.
And their shape is square.
Their shape is square.
Interesting, because we associate circle with feminine so much, and so many, so few earrings are square, right?
It's true.
I have had square earrings, but I think of square, right? It's really equidistant sides, as if there's a peculiar sense of balance in that too. Don't
Yes,
you think?
very
Like the
strong.
gold and silver, that the balance again is expressed in that. What do you think about, she says, you have a special source?
Well, I think that's, in a way, I in the dream am her inner therapist that is connected to her own source. So it's sort of like drawing on the archetypal source of the feminine, you know, from ancient times down. It's being in touch with that very rich and old tradition.
Yeah, and you as a woman, that it could be that you could say, you are my special source, right? That this connection is a special source until she can carry the feeling of that source, having that resource in herself. Right?
Exactly. And I think that happens so often in woman-to-woman psychotherapy.
That the woman carries the self for
Yes.
the woman, the sense of integrity, until the woman can take it up
Yes.
herself, until the
Yes.
woman patient can. Yeah.
Because people say to me so often, I never had any role models for being female, for being feminine.
Another dream. I am on a camping trip with my lover. I go into a barracks-like room where we're sleeping and begin to look through things on his bed. I find beautiful things that are meant to be gifts for me, silk things, jewelry. I'm surprised, and I quickly cover it up so that he won't know that I've seen anything. Later we want to make love, but my diaphragm is malfunctioning. My lover gets impatient. We eventually make love.
Well, I think that dream speaks, first of all, toward the end, about not having the diaphragm and going ahead with it anyway. In this woman's case, it was about the letting down of a particular barrier to intimacy with men, because she had had a lot of relationships with women, and she really wanted to move into marriage and children and all of that sort of thing. So, but she had a lot of resistance because of the father problem. And in this dream, finding all these gifts that he has for her is a real revelation, because the masculine has something to offer. It's not all bad. So the gifts of those jewels and scarves really show her that a man can honor the feminine, and that allows her to let go of her resistances.
And such a dream might come to a woman who's beginning to accept in herself that sense of valuing her own femininity.
Yes.
Or it might come as a compensation to somebody who needs to begin to meditate on letting that happen, on imagining that she could find feminine value in her man's bed, right?
Yes.
That it depends on one's particular phase of development or a particular stage in one's life, what the dream means. This is this particular woman's dream, but one might find jewelry in a man's bed before one is really able to accept it, right?
Yes,
And have to keep working with that. Another dream. I am back home. I find a gold leaf earring on the ground, a little bent. I know it is left over from the ritual. In my mind, the earring belongs to a goddess. I can't remember which one, which cult. I put it on. My mother looks at it. She says, "Why are you wearing that?" I'm upset because she doesn't know.
Well, I think that this dream is just a gem in terms of bringing up two issues. One is the way in which the unconscious spontaneously produces images for women that are helpful in her feminine development that come from ancient ceremonies. For instance, this is a gold leaf that she finds there. And there is an African tribe called the TR tribe in which the culmination of the woman's puberty ceremony is that a gold leaf is hung around her neck. And the leaf is from a particular tree that belongs to that region of Africa that embodies for them actually the union of masculine and feminine energy. And yet here it comes up in a modern woman's dream, spontaneously, and she knows its value. She knows it's important. And the other issue that comes up here is that her mother doesn't. And so often all of these themes to do with clothes and jewelry and hair, in my experience, finds the dreamer at odds with her mother, particularly where there hasn't been the kind of nurturing, valuing of the feminine that the girl needs to have. So here she knows the value, the mother doesn't, and it's a separating motif from her mother. She will have it. And the other thing that I find is that when a younger woman gets this, it often has an influence on her mother. So there's a renewal that comes about by virtue of the daughter having done the work.
Do you think in some way that same energy between mother and daughter is often expressed in the struggle about clothes and jewelry and hair? I mean, that's a big issue between mothers and daughters, isn't it, of accepting the daughter's dress?
Right. And I think that just in normal development, the autonomy issue comes up around those particular things. And I think to the extent that a mother can let a daughter go her own way, the girl will find her individuality and her style. But
there's so much fear in mothers about their daughter's outrageous dress, you know? Do you suppose in some way we as mothers feel some envy for that, what's allowed now in young girls to really express a lot of individuality in their dress and a lot of sexuality that we've been very terrified of in an earlier generation, you know?
Well, and I especially think that if a mother has not been able to fulfill herself in that way, or if she herself has not had permission, then she envies the younger one for it.
And that new edge that the younger woman brings. But she brings it in this dream. It's so beautiful because the younger woman recognizes that this piece of jewelry comes from the goddess, from the archetypal mother, right? From something older, bigger than this personal situation, right?
And then if she shares it with her personal mother, then they both benefit.
They both get the benefit of it, and the manna, the energy that comes from that, of self-acceptance. Dreams have a wonderful way of bringing just such gifts to women. A woman that I see was in a very severe depression at 57, lost and feeling sort of disconnected from no longer a mother, no longer a wife, her job not very satisfying, and really struggling with the issue of who she is and where she belongs at this postmenopausal stage in her life, had the following dream. I am a black woman, and flowers like jewels are growing out of my face. White and lavender lotus blossoms appear along my chin line and then around my mouth. I thought that was such a gorgeous dream. And the dream reminded me of the African rituals of scarification, in which women of a particular tribe mark themselves to have a sense of belonging to that tribe. And here's a spontaneous production from the unconscious of her belonging. She associated being a black woman with feeling inferior but feeling strong. Her association was that black women can endure all manner of difficulties and still live, and that they find joy in very difficult circumstances. She remembered black women, films in which black women were dancing and singing, and the colorful garb of African women. She associated with the lotus blossoms a particular expression of spirituality. She's done a lot of study in Eastern religions and with meditation. So that kind of dream is such a gift to a woman if she can take it in of an internal value system in which she belongs to life. She's marked as, and she's marked as being one of the tribe of women. The jewelry as flowers, you know. So much of even costume jewelry is expressed in flowers.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's the flower is another image of feminine beauty and feminine value.
Yes, and it so fits in with what we were talking about in terms of the woman's body being associated with the earth and its fruits. You know, here she has the flowers growing on her face.
Another dream, a very busy woman who was longing to get back to the quiet, which is naturally hers, had this warning dream. I am driving very fast along the high road with my husband. We fall over the edge. I land upright and okay on the low road. There I find a laughing woman Buddha who welcomes me. She's holding some pearls, which I want. But an old woman nearby says, you can't have them because you give them away. This woman realized that her being on the high road, being driven by the masculine in her, was very dangerous and that she could go over the edge. But that if she did, she's rewarded by winding up upright on her own road, on the low road, as it were. And in our culture, we're so often tempted to take the high, fast road, right? That it's very difficult to accept that slow, plodding, sometimes dirt road that's the feminine path, right?
Yes.
And sometimes goes in circles around the point. And that there's an old woman Buddha is a lovely image, that this woman has done enough spiritual work that she can experience the highest image of spirituality, one of the highest images of spirituality, as a woman.
Yes.
A woman Buddha is quite an image. And pearls?
Pearls from the unconscious.
Yes, from the depths.
Yes.
Yeah. And so she has to quit giving them away in order to get them, right?
Oh, how many women have to stop giving them away?
Giving our pearls away, don't we? Yeah. It's so hard to... that it's almost as soon as we have a pearl of wisdom or any sense of energy of value, there's this almost instinctive urge to give it away, isn't it? To give it to our children or to give it to our husbands, and that to somehow hold on to our pearls and plant them deep in our hearts so that our own sense of value can blossom into something productive is very difficult.
And I think the pearl is particularly relevant for that kind of image because it's inside the oyster shell. So it's very introverted. It grows in introversion.
Yeah. And out of a grain of sand rubbing.
Yes.
So that this is the beauty grown out of a constant irritation deep inside, right?
That too.
Yeah. Another common dream motif is lost jewelry. Here's such a dream out of Virginia's book. I wake up in bed with my lover. I've lost an earring in the bed. I look down and find many earrings and other jewelry in the bed. Then we're outside digging a hole in the ground, finding pot shards and bones, doing archaeology.
Well, this dream that came at a time when the dreamer was beginning a relationship that had a lot of potential really speaks to the work that so many women and men are doing together. They're digging in the ground. They're digging in the ground of their relationship, going back thousands of years, just in the work that they're doing in the present to recover and make new, deep and important and abiding relationships between men and women.
The broken shards.
Yes.
And the history
Right.
of man-woman relationship.
And that's
Right.
just there, just beneath the gifts
Uh-huh.
that are in the bed. An earring that she's lost, but she's finding it again.
It's interesting that she's lost one earring,
Yes.
right? But she finds
Lots.
much jewelry in the
Yes.
bed.
Yes. Yes.
How did she see that? As one becoming many, or that she has to give up something in order to get more? Or?
Well, I think in her case it had to do with not having the personal valuing in her history and having to find it on the archetypal level.
I see. In my paranoia, if I lost an earring in his bed and was looking and discovered much more jewelry, I'd be worried about it. I'd be worried about other women have been in that bed, right? So some women might take the dream like that too. But the major emphasis is that she has a sense of her own feminine adornment when she gets in his bed. So she's not just dependent on him for giving it to her too, right?
Right.
And it could be that she also finds there, when she wears her own earring and gives it up,
Yes.
she finds many more jewels
Yes.
in this relationship. Another very common dream of women who have been married for a while particularly, I am horrified to find that I've lost the diamond out of my wedding ring. And while searching for it frantically, I lose the wedding ring itself. When I first read Virginia that dream, we both laughed because it gets worse, doesn't it? That this woman who had this dream felt that somehow losing the diamond out of her wedding ring was a sense in which she really needed to give up her marriage as the highest value in her life. Not leave the marriage itself, but that her identity as a married woman and her identity as her husband's wife needed to be sacrificed. Often loss in a dream implies that we need to give up something, right? That, and then that she had to give up the whole ring would seem to indicate, and it did indicate to this woman, that there was, that she really needed not just to give up the value, but to give up her attachment to this marriage psychologically. A woman can stay in a marriage, but her own internal developmental process often requires that she give up her identity with the marriage.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk about hair. Hair is the stuff that grows out of one's head, right? It's natural growth, and it can be styled or colored to enhance one's sense of oneself, one's natural beauty. I mean, some women say that if they have a bad hair day, it gives them a very bad mood, right? It can spoil your whole day. What do you consider when hair or the color of hair appears in a dream?
Well, again, I think this has to do, Elizabeth, with transformation in identity and hairstyle, and certainly we see it everywhere now with young girls. All the 8th graders are dyeing their hair multiple colors in succession. And there's actually a young woman at my daughter's school who did her science project on what was the best color to use, the best product for the color and the price, etc. So I think, you know, that is a very transformative time for young girls. And changing your hair color is a very interesting transitional motif.
And the colorfulness, I think if you walk down the street, the colorfulness of the young women's hair is so imaginal. I mean, it's as if they somehow are enough in touch with nature, perhaps, that they can just experiment with being all colors of the rainbow, right?
Yes.
And older women get particularly concerned with preserving their youthful color, not turning gray, which I haven't had a choice about, but that hair can express our feeling about ourselves. Also, I think it has something to do with one's sense of one's spirit, like the new style of this wild, imaginal hair, you know,
yes.
or the just got out of bed hair look that's been popular, right, where your hair needs to be not fixed at
Yes.
all. A common dream women have expresses their anxiety about hair. Here's one woman's dream. I have an appointment with the hairdresser. I'm very anxious about what she will want to do with my hair. And that dream expresses a very common anxiety, right? That
Yes,
if I get my hair cut, what will the other person make of me, right? What will I
Right.
look like when I change my hair?
Well, I think in terms of those classical hairdresser dreams, it's more on the immediate level. It's who is this person? You know, if your hairdresser does something to your hair that you don't feel matches your self-image, you feel disoriented. you
That's
know?
right. It's a common dream at the beginning of analysis also, and that often the analyst shows up in a dream as the hairdresser or the barber, right? Because it's going to change my way of thinking.
Right.
That this process is going to change what comes out of my head, what's growing in my head. There's a dream about hair in Virginia's book. I'm at a beach, lying in the sun, sensually aware and sensitive. I have a little snake, a gift from my mother. I'm apprehensive it won't behave. I try to put it in the water, but it won't go. There's a flame nearby. I'm afraid it's going to get burned. My mother is behind me. She takes my hair and pulls it up. She says, "You've got to get your hair cut." And I say, "Why?" I'm very upset, as always, when she said that or wanted to change my image.
Yes. Well, this is the autonomy issue with the mother, and this young woman did need to separate from her mother and to find her own identity and her own way of presenting herself. But the snake is an archetypal image of rebirth, and somehow in the unconscious she did get that from her mother. So it's presenting both that sort of deeper relationship that she has with her mother and the more immediate personal experience of feeling intruded upon when her mother tried to change the way she looked.
What about putting the snake in the water, but it won't go?
Well, snakes and water are very, you know, the meander pattern in prehistoric times comes from the snake pattern. And the way the snake undulates is like a water pattern. So I think that she's trying to get her own psyche in order with that. She's trying to find what she did get from the mother in terms of the feminine in this deeper way might help her, but she's not quite ready yet.
That it won't quite, she can't quite push it.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah.
And another dream about hair. I see strands of my hair and a pair of hands tying it up into granny knots. I feel anxiety. Remember that dream?
Yes.
Yeah. What about this pair of hands?
Well, I think the pair of hands in this case is a very disturbing image. You know, hands have a very, are almost the first symbol that is found on the walls of caves, and the American Indians put handprints into the mud of the adobe buildings. It's a symbol and a way of saying, this is who I am. I was here. You know how kids do it too. They put their hands in mud, and these disembodied hands doing the hair really felt very bad, both to the dreamer and to me, and was virtually associated with her losing her mother or any feminine figure in her life at a very, very young age.
As if the hands that could nurture her had no body then.
Exactly, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's such an eerie image, and tying into a granny knot,
Right.
which is such an old, tight,
Yes, yes.
old woman tight hair, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
There's another dream that I saw. In the mirror, I see that my analyst is very carefully untangling my hair, and what used to look like a mass of writhing snakes is now becoming long, flowing locks of shining hair. This dream came up in my work with a woman at a time in which she was really feeling that she could trust the relationship, and that her feeling about what was happening in the therapeutic relationship was that she had been in a very chaotic state, and it reminded me of the Medusa's hair, which is writhing snakes, that she was feeling really quite crazy, and that in our talking and processing her experience of her life situation, that she was getting a feeling of more flowing and less snake-like, less cold-blooded thinking, more feminine kind of thinking. But that Medusa image of the snake hair is a very powerful image about hair, right? That to have snake hair is to have these wild thoughts that on one hand it's a real relationship to the deepest archetypal image of the feminine, so it has enormous power, but it also, like in the myth about Medusa, can paralyze the other person in its stark reality, right?
Yes, yeah. It's a bit out of control in that image.
Yeah. There's a dream in your book of a woman who dreamed about having her hair cut. I have my hair cut in a short, curly style. I'm excited about it, but afraid my lover won't recognize me. I'm afraid I've changed everything about me. Remember that?
Yes. Well, I think this alludes to what you were saying about the fear on the part of a woman that if she changes her hair, that people around her will have a negative reaction. And this particular woman was having a lot of insecurity about her relationship to the man that she eventually was going to marry. And I think that she was also pregnant at this time. Really? So she felt that she had changed everything about her.
Including the somehow cutting her hair shorter as a part of the analysis too, right? That her haircut, the analysis,
right?
The working with her hair, with her thinking,
and with her thoughts,
might change her.
Yes, beyond recognition.
Irreparably, right. Clothes, jewelry, and hairstyles are extremely important symbols of transformation and self-acceptance in a woman's dream life as well as in her everyday life.